A human financial advisor charges you around 1% of your portfolio every year. For that, you get a phone call every quarter and a PDF you never read. Today, we're building the replacement, an AI analyst that lives on your machine, remembers your entire strategy, tracks your real positions, generates a live portfolio dashboard, and writes you a morning brief with live prices and the overnight headlines that actually touch your holdings. And here's the part that makes this build different. You will not type a single command into a terminal. Every step, creating the files, writing the templates, building the dashboard, running the brief, happens through Claude itself. You talk, it builds. The folder of Markdown files it maintains is the brain. 5 steps. Every prompt I use on screen is in the companion guide in the Discord, ready to paste. Let's go. One thing before we start, and I mean this. This is an educational build. It's a research analyst, not a licensed advisor. It organizes information and stress tests your thinking. The decisions stay yours. Step 1. The workspace. There's exactly one piece of setup that isn't a conversation, giving Claude access to your files. In the desktop app, that's Settings, Extensions, Enable File System, and point it at a folder. If you live in the terminal like I do, launch Claude Code from an empty folder. Same result, 30 seconds, and it's the last settings menu you'll see in this video. Now, watch the first prompt. I tell Claude, create my advisor workspace, an instructions file, a profile file, a memory folder with strategy, positions, and journal files, a dashboard folder, and a briefs folder. On screen, you can see it create the entire tree itself and read the structure back to me. That's the whole architecture. Instructions is the contract, how Claude behaves and how it uses its memory. Profile is who you are as an investor. Strategy is your rules. Positions is what you hold. Journal is the decision log. Briefs is where every morning report gets archived. 5 files, 2 folders, 0 commands typed. Notice the pattern will use all video. You describe, Claude builds, and everything it builds lands on your disk where you can see it. Step 2. Teach it who you are. And this is my favorite part of the build because we do it the way a real advisor would, an intake meeting. The prompt is in the guide, and it turns Claude into an interviewer. One question at a time. Time horizon, income stability, how much of a drawdown you can actually sit through, your non-negotiables, the things you'll never touch regardless of hype, and your goal in numbers with a date. When the interview's done, Claude writes the whole thing into profile.md, structured, and reads it back for your sign-off. Be brutally honest in this interview. If you panic sold the last dip, say so. Watch it write that down. The system is only as good as the self-awareness you feed it. A profile that claims high risk tolerance, written by someone who sells every red candle, produces advice that hurts you. On screen, you can see the finished file. That's a better investor profile than most people have ever written, and it took a 5-minute conversation. Step 3. The core of the build, the part that makes it feel alive. First, the contract. One paste from the guide tells Claude to write its own instructions file. The contract says, at the start of every session, read the profile, the strategy, the positions, and the last 5 journal entries. Then greet me with a status line. After any meaningful conversation, append a dated journal entry. When positions change, update the positions file immediately and log the reasoning. And the rule that matters more than all the others. If my request conflicts with my own strategy file, quote the exact rule back to me before doing anything else. Second, the strategy. Same interview trick as the profile. Claude asks about target allocations, rebalance bands, position size limits, take profit rules, then drafts strategy.md as a proper rulebook with a table, and you approve it line by line. This file is your discipline layer. Claude's job is to hold you to it when your emotions want to ignore it, and if you've watched my backtesting videos, you already know why that matters. The edge is structure, not signals. Third, positions. No spreadsheet formatting. You literally tell Claude what you hold, in plain English, entries and all, and it builds the positions table itself. Now the test that sells the whole system. I tell Claude I trimmed a position. Watch the screen. It edits positions, appends a dated journal entry with the reasoning, and flags that my allocation drifted from target. Then I close the chat completely. Open a brand new one, It reads the files and greets me with everything because the memory was never in the chat. The chat is disposable. The folder is the brain. Pro move from the guide. Drop the contract into a Claude project's instructions, so every chat in that project wakes up preloaded. Open a chat and it already knows your book. Step 4. Make it visual. One prompt from the guide. Read my positions and my strategy and build me a single-page HTML dashboard in the dashboard folder. Allocation versus target per bucket, a drift column, the positions table, and a notes panel fed from the journal. On screen, Claude writes the entire page. And this is real screen time worth watching because you can see it structure the file, wire the drift logic, and style it live. Dark theme, clean cards, my real allocation next to my target allocation. The drift column is doing the actual work here. It turns, I feel like I should rebalance into a number. Amber when you're halfway out of the band, red when you're outside it. Double-click the file, it opens in your browser, no dependencies, and updating it forever is one sentence. Refresh the dashboard. Claude rereads the files and regenerates the page. No spreadsheet, no SaaS subscription, no handing your holdings to a third-party tracker. Step 5. The daily routine, the part that makes this feel like an advisor instead of a tool you have to remember to use. This is one reusable prompt, and it's the best one in the guide. When I say, run my morning brief, here's what Claude does, in order, on screen. It reads my memory files. It pulls live prices for every holding. Then, and this is a straight lift from the news desk build, it reads the same 3 RSS feeds we wired up in that video. CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, Decrypt, top headlines only. Then it writes the brief under strict rules, my total value, overnight moves, whether anything drifted past my rebalance bands, and it mentions a headline only if it directly touches my holdings. No relevant news? It stays silent on news. Nothing needs attention? It says so in one line. A system that only speaks when something crosses a threshold you defined is a system you'll actually keep using. Last touch, it saves every brief as a dated file in the briefs folder. Scroll that folder in a month and you have a written history of your portfolio. Every single morning, searchable. And there's a bigger sibling to this prompt in the guide, the weekly review. Same idea, deeper cut. Once a week, Claude walks the full journal instead of the last few entries, recalculates drift across every bucket, checks whether any of your own take profit or rebalance rules got triggered and ignored, and ends with exactly one thing to watch next week. Not 5 things. 1. Because a review that ends with a to-do list gets skipped, and a review that ends with a single sentence gets read. So the routine is 3 words every morning, 1 prompt every Sunday. That's the whole ritual, and both of them get archived to the briefs folder automatically. Let me run the loop end to end so you see it as one system. Fresh session in the Advisor project. Claude reads the memory files and opens with the status line. Targets, holdings, last journal entry, open flags. I ask it to evaluate a position against my strategy. No generic take. It quotes my own rules back at me and checks the numbers against my thresholds. I report a change. Positions updated, journal logged, drift recalculated. I say, refresh the dashboard. The drift column changes color in my browser. Then, run my morning brief. Prices in, headlines in, brief out, on screen in seconds, archived to the briefs folder with today's date. Files, dashboard, briefs, 3 surfaces, 1 brain, and every piece of it sitting on my own disk. No platform can change the pricing on this, close the API, or lock my own history behind a tier. If Claude disappeared tomorrow, the folder still reads like a complete record of my portfolio and every decision behind it. Plain markdown, openable in anything. That's the build. 5 files, 1 folder, and an analyst that compounds in usefulness because every conversation makes its memory better. The exact opposite of every fresh chat AI interaction you've had until now. If you want to push it further, this pairs naturally with the Fable Desk build, the 4-agent paper trading system from a few videos back. Same memory folder, different brains reading it. That's a future video if you want it. Tell me in the comments. Everything from this video, the Workspace prompt, the intake interviews, the contract, the dashboard prompt, the morning brief prompt, is in the companion guide, free in the Discord. Link below. If you build it, post your dashboard in the community. I want to see the variations. Standard reminder, educational content, not financial advice. This system organizes your thinking. It doesn't guarantee outcomes. Manage your risk. Subscribe if you want the next build. See you in the next one.